Presented by Cursed by the Witch. Warning, use headphones before listening to horror podcast story.
The Phantom Touch is a deeply unsettling horror story about a mysterious, invisible force that haunts its victims, manifesting as an unseen presence that leaves behind an eerie, cold touch. The story delves into themes of isolation, fear of the unknown, and the helplessness that comes with being pursued by something that cannot be seen or stopped. The tale follows several characters as they struggle to understand and escape the relentless entity that seems to feed on their growing paranoia and terror. Part 8. The First Encounter. The story opens with Emily, a quiet and reserved woman in her mid-20s, who recently moved to a small, rural town to escape the chaos of city life. She rents an old, isolated house that has been vacant for years. The house, though charming on the surface, has an eerie atmosphere, with long corridors, dark corners, and creaky floorboards that seem to whisper secrets long forgotten. From the moment Emily moves in, strange things begin to happen. At first, they're small and easily explained away, doors creaking open by themselves, cold drafts that appear out of nowhere, and the sensation that she's never quite alone, even when she's sitting in the quiet of her living room. However, the unease grows stronger when Emily begins to experience a peculiar sensation, the feeling of being touched. It starts subtly, an icy brush against her arm, a faint pressure on her shoulder, or a fleeting cold grip on her hand. At first, she dismisses it as her imagination or perhaps the cold drafts that seem to plague the old house. But soon, the touches become more distinct, more invasive, and unmistakably real. Part 2. The Phantom's Grip tightens. Emily's encounters with the unseen force intensify. The cold, ghostly touches become a nightly occurrence. She feels it while lying in bed, a chilling hand sliding across her skin, waking her from sleep. During the day, she feels a slight tug on her clothes or a light tap on her back, always when she's alone. The invisible entity's presence feels stronger at night, as if it is drawn to the quiet stillness of the dark. Emily becomes increasingly paranoid, feeling the constant weight of the entity's presence even when it isn't physically touching her. She starts to hear faint whispers in the night, indecipherable, but always there, just on the edge of her hearing. She tries to ignore it, convincing herself that the isolation is playing tricks on her mind, but the cold, invasive touch never leaves her for long. Unable to sleep and terrified of being alone in her own home, Emily confides in her friend Lena, who agrees to visit and stay with her for a few nights. Lena is skeptical but wants to help Emily, thinking that the stress of moving and the isolation of the rural house are causing her friend to hallucinate or imagine things. However, it doesn't take long for Lena to experience the phantom touch herself. One evening, as the two women sit in the living room, Lena suddenly gasps and jumps up, clutching her arm. She swears she felt something cold grip her wrist, though there's nothing around her. Now convinced that something supernatural is at work, Lena insists that they leave the house, but Emily feels strangely connected to it, as though leaving would somehow make things worse. Part 3. The History of the House. Desperate for answers, Emily begins to investigate the history of the house. She searches through old town records and speaks with the few remaining older residents who remember the property's past. What she uncovers is a chilling history. The house was once owned by a man named Victor Hale, a reclusive figure who was rumored to have dabbled in dark rituals and occult practices. According to the local legend, Hale was obsessed with the idea of immortality and conducted strange experiments in his home, often locking himself away for days at a time. The townspeople believed that Hale's isolation was due to his descent into madness, but after his mysterious disappearance, rumors spread that something far darker had occurred. Some believe that Hale had succeeded in creating a connection between the physical world and the spirit realm, but at a terrible cost. His body was never found, and some say his spirit lingers in the house, searching for a way to reclaim the physical world through the living. Others believe that Hale's experiments opened a door to something malevolent, something that still roams the halls, feeding off the fear of those who enter its domain. The more Emily learns, the more convinced she becomes that the house is haunted by an entity that was either created or summoned by Hale, an entity that has attached itself to her and is becoming more aggressive with each passing day. Part 4. The haunting escalates. As the days go on, the phantom touch becomes more violent. Emily begins to notice bruises on her body, hand-shaped marks that she cannot explain. The touches are no longer gentle or fleeting, they are harsh, forceful, and filled with malice. The entity seems to be growing stronger, feeding on her fear and desperation. At night, she feels it gripping her arms, pulling at her legs, and pressing down on her chest, as though trying to suffocate her. The whispers have grown louder, and she can now hear words, though they are in a language she doesn't understand. The house itself seems to be alive, with the walls creaking and groaning as if something is moving within them. Lena returns to the house, determined to help her friend, but the moment she steps inside, she is overcome with the sensation of being watched. As the two women sit together, they hear footsteps in the hall, though no one is there. The temperature drops suddenly, and both of them feel a cold, ghostly hand brush their skin. Lena, terrified, tries to convince Emily to leave, but Emily is paralyzed by fear and a strange sense of attachment to the house. She believes that the entity won't let her leave, that it will follow her wherever she goes. Part 5. The final confrontation. In the story's climax, Emily decides to confront the entity once and for all. She seeks out an occult expert from a nearby town, Professor Daniel Hargrave, who specializes in paranormal investigations. Hargrave, intrigued by the story of the house and its connection to Victor Hale, agrees to help. Hargrave conducts a séance in the house, hoping to make contact with the entity and determine its true nature. As the séance begins, the air in the room grows cold, and the candles flicker wildly. The entity makes its presence known, but it is not Hale's spirit. It is something far darker, a malevolent force that feeds on the life energy of those it touches. The séance quickly spirals out of control as the entity becomes enraged, attacking Hargrave and Emily with a force they cannot see. Hargrave is thrown across the room, while Emily feels the icy grip of the entity tightening around her throat, suffocating her. In a desperate attempt to banish the entity, Hargrave recites an incantation from one of Hale's old journals, a ritual meant to sever the entity's connection to the physical world. The room erupts in chaos as the entity's fury reaches its peak. Emily feels the phantom hands pulling at her, trying to drag her into the darkness, but as Hargrave completes the ritual, the cold grip suddenly releases her. The house falls silent, the air no longer thick with malevolence. The entity is gone, banished, for now. Part 6. The lingering terror. Though the entity has been driven away, Emily is left scarred by the experience. The bruises on her body eventually fade, but the memory of the phantom touch haunts her. She moves out of the house, leaving Ravenwood behind, but no matter where she goes, she cannot shake the feeling that something is still watching her. Late at night, she sometimes feels a cold brush against her skin, as if the entity's presence lingers, waiting for the right moment to return. The story ends with Emily looking into the mirror, the faint imprint of a hand slowly fading from her shoulder, a chilling reminder that some things can never truly be escaped. The Phantom Touch is a story about the terror of the unseen and the helplessness of being hunted by something that cannot be fought or reasoned with. The creeping dread of the entity's invisible presence and the growing paranoia that comes with it make this tale a haunting exploration of fear itself.
Thank you for watching. Just like and subscribe.